everyone, my name is Marilene Quintana. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and director of Visa Immigration Services. In this video, we are going to talk about the 5 tips for those who are planning to come to Canada soon or just arrived in Canada and wants to understand what they have to do once they arrive here. It is important to mention that we do weekly videos on living, studying, working, and immigrating to Canada. So if you are interested in this subject, please do not forget to follow us on our social media. The first tip of this video is regarding healthcare. Most provinces will offer you access to the public healthcare system if you are authorized to stay in Canada for longer than 6 months. However, all the provinces has a waiting time, a time that you have to wait until you have the beginning of the coverage. In most provinces, the waiting time it is 3 months. For this reason, it's very important for you to acquire a private health plan so you have coverage in the beginning, in the first 3 months of your arrival in Canada. If you are coming to BC, you are eligible to have access to the healthcare system, even if you are a student, worker, or a new permanent resident. However, if you are a student or worker, you have to have permit valid for at least 6 months. As a student, however, the plan is not going to be free. You're going to have to pay $75 a month for access to the coverage. However, if you are a worker or a new immigrant recently landed in Canada, the service is free of charge. In Ontario, only workers and new permanent resident of Canada have access to the plan. Students in Ontario must have their private health plan for the entire period of their studies. And if you are coming as a worker, you only have access to the coverage after you are already in the province working for at least 6 months. It is important to mention that the information about eligibility and costs shared in this video are up to date at the time that we posted this video. So if you're seeing this video in a future date, it is important to access the Canadian provincial websites for confirmation of eligibility and cost. The public healthcare system in Canada is regulated by each province, which means that every province has its own set of laws and regulations that guides the eligibility and the cost of accessing the healthcare services on each province. The next tip is about the SIN number. The SIN number is your tax identification number. It is a number that's necessary for you to collect taxes and also to inform your employer at the time you are hired in Canada. In order to apply for a SIN number, you must have your passport, your authorization to study or work in Canada, and a permanent address in Canada. Usually, you do this process in person. It is very easy, just take 5 minutes, but you also have access to do it online. When you are a temporary resident of Canada, your SIN number, you start with the number 9 and it will have a temporary validity. It means that the document is going to be valid only up to the duration of your work permit or study permit, which means that if you once in Canada need to extend your stay in Canada or renew your work or study permit, you are also required to extend that document. Of course, if you're coming as a student, you must have the authorization to work in Canada in order to be eligible to have your SIN number. Once you become a permanent resident of Canada, your SIN number will start with number 2 or number 7, which means that the SIN number will not have an expiry date. Having a SIN number is one of the first things that you have to do once you arrive in Canada because it is required in case of employment. Another very important thing to do once you arrive in Canada is to get your ID document. This is important because most of the time your national identity does not have translation to English or French, which means it may be not accepted in Canada in anywhere you need to present your ID. and it is not safe to be carrying your passport everywhere. However, you can only have your ID if you are authorized to stay in Canada for longer than 6 months. In BC, in order to apply for your BC ID, you must go to ICBC, which is the provincial department that takes care of IDs and driver's license. The cost for an ID is $35. In order to apply for a BC ID, you must be at least 12 years old, and that document will be valid for 5 years. In Ontario, in order to apply for Ontario ID, you must go to Service Ontario, and the cost is also $35. You must be at least 16 years old, and you must also present authorization to stay in Canada for longer than 6 months. Fourth, and very important, is to open a bank account. As soon as you arrive in Canada, you should open a bank account. This is because you need a bank account first to pay bills, to have some money here in case of an emergency, and also if you are going to work in Canada, you need a bank account in order to receive your salary or deposit your checks. Another very important reason to open a bank account is to start your credit history. It is very important to open a bank account in Canada because with the bank account, you start building your credit history. And the credit history is taken into consideration when you want to finance a big purchase such as a car or even a house. In order to build a good credit history, it is important for you to always pay your bills before the due date and do not maximize the use of credit cards. It is also important to avoid requesting increasing of your limit or new credit cards in a time span shorter than 6 months. To open a bank account in Canada, it is very simple without bureaucracy. You just need your passport, a permanent address, and your SIN number. You usually need to do an appointment at the bank, and in most banks, you have personalized service in your own native language. Also, most banks offer accounts for students free of charge. The 5 biggest banks in Canada are RBC Bank, TD Bank, Scotiabank, BMO, and CIBC. But there are also other local options available according to the province that you go. Next tip, cell phone. Once you arrive in Canada, it is very important to establish your new network channels, make new friends, and of course, look for a job in Canada. Most employers may decide to turn down your resume if you don't have a local number, so it's very important for you to have a phone number locally once you start looking for jobs. As in most countries in the world, you have the option to acquire a prepaid phone, which means you have to buy credits every month to recharge your phone, but without contract, or acquire a plan on a contract basis. The phone plan, it is usually a good opportunity for those who are going to stay for long term in Canada, also wants to acquire a device with the plan, so the person can pay in installments the cost of the device. The approximate cost of a monthly plan, it is $70 a month, and usually includes unlimited calls and messages and a very good data plan. Of course, this price may vary according to the current promotion or even with the amount of calls and data that you require. For the prepaid phones, most plans require a charge of at least $25 a month. Usually, we recommend clients to have a prepaid phone if they are staying less than 6 months, and a payment plan phone on a contract if you are staying longer than 6 months. There are several different carriers to choose from: TELUS, Bell, Fido, Virgin Mobile, Rogers, Freedom, and Koodo. The coverage of these companies may also vary according to the province. So that's all for today. I hope you guys like these tips, and if you are interested in the content related to living, working, studying, or immigrating to Canada, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on our social media. Thanks for watching. See you next time.